And then the other thing is really when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, think of how you can throw the balls to someone else, transfer trust by writing down everything you do and really thinking of who else can do this with you rather than how can I keep doing it myself? Because it's really hard to grow a business if you stay one. It's really that multiplier factor, right? One person can only do so much. Two people can do more, three people can do even more, and that's how you scale.
Are you feeling overwhelmed, stuck, or uncertain about how to grow your business without sacrificing what really matters most? Welcome to The Business You Really Want, the show for women ready to build a sustainable, fully aligned business. Aligned with what, you ask? You, your values, your life. Seriously, it is possible. I'm Tanya Kubo, and along with business advisor extraordinaire Gwen Bortner, we're here to show you how.
Today's episode is part of my What It Really Takes series, real conversations with clients who have built businesses that align with their vision of success, not someone else's. This time, I'm talking with my good friend and longtime client, Nicole Serena, who started as an independent consulting, drowning in client work, and is now leading a thriving agency with a team handling most of the delivery. Now, her transformation didn't come from hustle. It came from redefining success, simplifying that wasn't serving her, and stepping fully into her leadership role as CEO. If you're stretched thin as a solo provider or trying to scale sustainably, this conversation will feel both refreshing and completely achievable. And if you like what you hear and would like to talk a little bit more about it, let's chat. You can book a call at everydayeffectiveness.com/clarity. So let's jump in. Hi there, and welcome to What It Really Takes, Sustainable Success, this time with Nicole Serena. I'd love to tell you what Nicole is CEO of, but there's like 8,000 businesses that Nicole has. The overarching business is Walter and Associates, but I think the primary business we're going to be talking about today is PSP Solutions. My name is Gwen Bortner. I am the CEO, founder, owner of Everyday Effectiveness, and Nicole and I have been working together for, I think it's about 5 years now. I've actually kind of lost track.
Yeah, it is.
Working with her in her business. And we're going to talk today about what it's like to be working with me and how we were able to work together for her to build a business that started out pretty much as, a one-man band of Nicole doing it all to a really successful agency that she has been able to be built. And so instead of me giving, a big, long explanation of who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your business is like today, who you serve, what you do, and then we'll do a little backwards in time, back in time, and you can tell us about where we started when you and I first started working.
Sure. Thanks, Gwen. And excited to be here with you. Nicole Serena, I'm the CEO, and today we'll talk about PSP Solutions because that's the one that Gwen and I work together most of the time. What we do is we work within the healthcare industry, and if we think of ourselves as patients, if you get prescribed high cost medication, and let's say your insurance doesn't cover all of it, there's programs out there that help you manage the difficult navigation of private or public insurance, also covering some of that, extra copay or deductible that can be thousands of dollars, as well as helping you figure out, how do I store this medication? If it's an injection, how do I give myself an injection, or how do I get someone to do it? So we work with the companies that design these programs. We help them when they get a little messy in the middle. We help right size them when they get too expensive. That's kind of our expertise that we work in. I started out as a single consultant coming out of a 25-year corporate role, and I saw a niche in the market for consulting, and now we have an agency, which is really exciting.
And how many folks do you have working with you both as how big is the team? And how big is the biggest
team right now?
Yeah. So it's grown pretty significantly in a relatively short period of time. So when we first started working together, I think overwhelm is probably, I mean, that's probably an overused term right now, but I'm thinking you were nearing overwhelm because you really were delivering all of the services, wearing all the hats, getting all the sales, doing, all the thing. What made you decide you needed to do something different? What was the reason you reached out? What was the reason you decided we should start working together?
Yeah, and I use the analogy of juggling many balls, and a lot of my team and people who work with me know that. And I was juggling more balls, I think, than I'd ever done. And some were plastic, some were rubber and could bounce, and some were glass. And I was getting too many in there, and I was really worried that an important one was going to drop and break. And starting out a fairly new consultant, building your reputation that way in an industry, people remember long when you don't do something well. So I was really worried something was going to drop, and I was trying to manage so many things. It was getting to where I was worried that something important wasn't going to either hit a deadline, or I was going to forget a meeting or something like that, or get double booked because I was doing it all myself. And you remember those days. I was filling every minute of the day and then some.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we all only have 24 hours, but somehow you were working 26. I'm not even quite sure.
Going through dimensions or something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You were in some alternative universe at the same time. I don't even know how you were doing it. When we first started working together, I remember one of the things that you talked about was bringing on a virtual assistant or someone to help you. And I gave you different advice, which I think was the first time I got I don't think I can do that look. Yeah. Do you remember what that advice was?
I think you told me I had to bring on another consultant first.
That was it. That was it. So tell me about what that was like for you both when I said that, why was that kind of oh, I can't possibly do that? Talk a little bit about that, because, one of the things that I talk about a lot is I approach things differently than what is kind of common knowledge, normal approaches. And I think this was an example of that for you. And I also think it paid off hugely for you.
It did. It truly did. And it really changed how I thought about how I was doing my business. Because the area that we work in, there's a very high level of expertise we needed. So the first thing, of course, I had to get my ego out of the way to think that someone else could possibly do this work too. And then I was like, how could I find anyone? Because in our industry, most people have jobs, and sometimes there's more jobs in this area than there are people experienced. So I was thinking everyone's going to want a job, and how am I going to get another consultant out there? And then the bigger one that everyone has is, how can I afford someone else as well?
So what was your approach? Like I said, when you first, I was very much I can't possibly do this. And then one of the things that I love about you is usually somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, I get a text that's oh, I've thought of 18 people. I've totally solved this problem. So how did you go through the mind shift? Because I think that that's a really important piece of being able to be successful in doing this kind of scaling that you've been able to do, is you really did have to shift your mind. So how did you get there?
Well, you helped me, one, because you were talking about, you said, write down all the things that you would want them to do, and then start talking to people. And I remember being in another entrepreneur group, and someone was presenting, and it was more about being connected to people. And it was write down everyone write everybody else that is connected to those people and everything. And I kind of took those two and put them together. So first off, I was like, okay, if I needed another consultant who did something like me, this is everything I would need them to do and the type of experience I would need. And then I wrote down people's names of people I would reach out to say, hey, do you know someone? And then as I was in different meetings or talking to different people, I just bring it up. And what was interesting for that one, almost the first person I talked to, I was like, hey, I'm looking for someone like this. And they're like, oh my gosh, I have to connect you with someone. They just finished this role and they're looking for something. You guys would be great together. And then a couple others came up at the same time. And then that's when I texted you and was like, oh my gosh, there actually are a couple more people. And I'm going to, reach out, even though I was scared. Why not? Because I couldn't do it all. I needed someone else to help me.
Well, and part of the reason that I remember giving you that advice is when, people are so often encouraged to hire a VA. Let's just hire a VA, get all of the admin off your plate. But but you can only get the admin off your plate if you've got the systems and processes written down. And that was one of the questions, like, I'm betting we don't have much of this like out of your brain. And you're like, no, none of this is out of my brain. And so I said, let's give you space to be able to get it out of your brain. And so part of that was then let's get someone else to do some of the client delivery aspects of it. And of course that was also then, the beginning of building the agency. So one of the things that you said, which I really appreciated, was you had to get your ego out of the way. And I think that's something that all of us, I'd love to say it doesn't happen to me. That would be a lie. It's like, I am the very best about being able to deliver this service. There's no one else who can possibly do it. Getting the ego out of the way is a big piece. What are some of the other things that as you've been, going through this process over the years? There's been a lot of shifts that you've had to make. What are some of the other shifts that you've had to make to be able, and I'm going to say it, to allow the business to grow and scale?
Yeah, and I'm going to reference a couple books, because there were a couple books at the same time as working with you that really changed my mindset. Because I'm the type of person that I can do it all. I can do it all pretty good.
You're
there's some
totally
things
capable
I do
of doing
really
it.
good. And the book Who Not How really changed my mindset of, rather than figuring out how to do it, find the right who. And so that, with you also, challenging me to find someone else, getting that mindset of going, I don't have to be excellent at everything. I just have to find the excellent person at that role and hire them, and really get out of the mindset of, I do have to do it all myself. I think that was one of the biggest ones. The other thing that I also learned, and I remember you saying it to me, because I had one, and you almost immediately said, now you have to get ready to hire another one almost immediately. And I was like, but I just got one. How could I possibly need another? And it was really learning that never be 100% full. Always have about 80% should be your max. So that you always have room to grow. Because if you're always driving at 100, and I know our other friend Ellen and others tell me I drive too fast, work and everything else, to slow down and plan for that. So, give yourself, one, some room in case a big project comes on, you've got the capacity to do it, and two, you don't burn yourself out.
Yeah, I think that's a huge piece, because we always feel like we can't do more until we're full. But you're right. When we're full, we don't have space to actually take on more,
Exactly.
right? But we also can't do it when we're at 20% full either, right? It is finding that balance. And I think you're right. I think it's somewhere in that, 75 to 90% range that is kind of that sweet spot to know that when you're getting there, it's like, oh, we need to be ready for that next jump as it goes. So one of the things that we've been discussing, quite a bit over this last year is the fact that your role now really is CEO role, which was very different than your role was during definitely the first 2 or 3 years, and possibly even the last 3 or 4 years, where a lot of your role and identity was still expert. Right. And we've talked about that a lot. How has being, shifting into that CEO role, where are the challenges that you've seen in that, and where has it gone well? Where has it been hard, both for shifting into the CEO and also kind of letting go, for lack of a better term, of that expert role?
Yeah. And it is hard, especially when you're seen as the expert in an area. We kind of changed some of the language. So you and I work together. And so thought leader has become more of the word. As a CEO, I may be a thought leader in the industry, but I don't have to be just the only expert. It also allows, I've really gone from a me mentality to a we mentality of, I have a team of experts. I'm a leader of a team of experts. And I think that's what really helped me from becoming the CEO, is recognizing I have a team of experts, so I don't have to be the only expert anymore. I am a visionary by design in my brain. And so CEO is a great role for me when I realize, as the CEO, I'm not the manager of everything. I'm the visionary leader. of my company, and then I have management that helps me.
So, what's been one of your biggest challenges as CEO? Because it really is a shift from being the provider to CEO. Just pick anyone. There's always a list, but
Yeah, it's funny. Part of it's the details. So the details that I need to know are different than the details I used to need to know. And also not being in the detail all the time and really getting myself out of it. I would say that's one of the biggest ones. And then the second one is really looking future focused. So I can't, as a CEO, I have to be planning and looking forward and looking bigger rather than being focused on all the minute details. I have a staff for doing that now. And it's transferring trust. We've talked a lot about transferring trust over the last year. That's the part where you have to give up things that you've never given up before. And you are still accountable for them, but you might not be responsible for them.
Talk a little bit more about transfer. I was hoping you'd bring up transferring trust because I think that's probably, I'm very much about context matters and every situation is different. But I would say that's probably one of the things that's most consistent as a challenge for anyone growing and scaling their business is that transfer of trust. Talk a little bit more about, because it also doesn't always work out. And I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes it doesn't it doesn't work out as well, but we can still, recover from that. So talk about some of your experience about transferring trust. Either maybe both a win and a loss because both are important because they're both probably going to happen.
A win, transferring trust. I mean, the very first one I did is when I hired my executive assistant. I transferred my whole calendar to her, and I trusted her to look after my time for me, which, at the beginning, that's scary. Like, people say, can I book a meeting with you? And it's like, no, you have to talk to my admin. And so there can be some ego involved in all of that too. And it was truly, she's much better at managing my calendar than me. And I learned that because I'd fill every corner and everything. And she ensures I have time for breaks, time for planning, time for this. So that was the first and very successful transfer of trust was, you're taking my calendar, and I would say 95% of the time I'm good at not putting anything in there. And that was really hard at the beginning.
Well, and let me jump in here because one of the things that's important about this is it was still hard, but yet this was not an unknown person to you even in this role, right? So can you talk just a little bit more about what your previous relationship was with this exec? Because I think it's important to realize that it was hard, even though this was not, just hiring somebody off the street for this job.
Yeah. So I hired from my corporate life. I heard that an executive assistant that I'd worked with in the past was retiring. And so I reached out because I didn't need a full-time person and could give her a very flexible schedule. And so I knew her well. I knew we worked together. So we had a basis of trust, but we had to expand that trust to giving her much higher access to all my time. So she sees my full calendar, not just work, personal, everything. She sees it all. And even with, we had a good relationship, there was still a big transfer of trust to give that fully open. Like, we have it where she may book a meeting for me. I can't change it. She has to change it, not me. So I'm not allowed to change it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. Do you have an example that you're willing to share of where it didn't quite work out like you hoped and how you recovered from it?
Yeah. We actually had a recent one where we had someone who was working with us for a while. And what's interesting too is sometimes people who are in your company when it's at one stage don't fit later. They worked very closely with our team, did a lot of my events. So like this kind of thing, webinars and everything, and struggled a bit as we grew because there was different reporting and that sort of thing. And then they quit with no notice. And literally 2 days later, we were running a webinar and the transfer of trust was all in her calendar. So I couldn't even change it. We had to work with our IT team to allow other people in it, get access. And so that was where we transferred trust without a backup. And what I learned from that is transfer trust, but always have backup for key ones so that if something unexpected happened, even if someone was sick or something, we would have been in the same situation. This was a little more drastic, but that was where I transferred trust maybe too quickly and without thinking of backups.
Well, and I think I think that is an important piece to bring up, because that trust piece isn't just like, are you a good person? Because they're a good person. But it really is about what happens when something goes astray that is out of anyone's control.
Exactly.
Right. And do we have ways to deal with that, and knowing what that is. And I will say it is a consistent problem that I have seen anybody that's doing any sort of growth or scaling, is we usually go through that process and realize, oh, we thought we had things in place that we didn't have in place. Because I had a very similar experience, about a year ago as well, where there were things that I thought were in place, and then we went to look at them and bring someone else in, and it was a completely agreed upon departure. But once we really got underneath the hood, it was like, oh, things that we thought were there were not there, and all of a sudden we were having to to recreate. So I think it's an example of trust but verify.
Exactly.
Right? I think there's an important piece. So when, looking back, what is one thing that you stopped doing or simplifying that you think had one of the biggest impacts on your ability to scale in a sustainable way?
I made notes too. You'd be impressed with me. I did my homework. One thing, the biggest thing I did was I stopped trying to do it all myself. And now, my mindset really changed. And when we're scaling and doing the next big thing, my first question isn't how am I going to do it? It's who's going to do it for me. And then I go out to the network and ask, who do you know that's good at this? The second thing I've done from the whole transfer of trust is I don't too fast. Sometimes I still do. But I won't go with the first person someone tells me. I'll check with a couple. I'll, go to my advisors like you to say, do you think I'm doing this right? Rather than just immediately jumping into something. That's the other thing. Because scaling, and I've learned it, scaling fast, it's exciting. You get the rush from growth and everything. You have to build the structure behind it. And I think that's something that you and a few others that work with me are always on me about is you have, as you scale, if you're building a large building, you look at all the scaffolding around it. You have to have the process and the structure around it to be able to scale more. And so, yes, you can scale fast. You need to have the structure around it. Otherwise, it gets a little shaky.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about from that time to time is that you are able to move fast because it's part of your superpower. It's part of your entrepreneurial vision. It's, all of the things. But very few people can keep up with it. And so, we've talked about having, I believe we call them stability quarters.
Yeah, those are not my favorite.
But to explain why they've been useful, because I know that they're not your favorite, but I know you've also seen the value of them.
I definitely see the value of them, and you're always very good at making me notice when I need one. And you also, I forget the name of the book, but it talked about when you get in the rapids and you're feeling shaky. I love business development and sales, so when I'm not feeling good about something, I'll just go and get more business. And I remember you telling me and reading this book, getting more business is going to make it worse, not better. And so you need a stabilizer to build that structure. And when you build the structure, it might be like, hey, you have 10 projects going on. You need to find another consultant, or you need to find another project coordinator now, not in 2 months. And that's where it's like, okay, we need to stabilize a quarter to catch up and make sure we have enough team. And that I haven't burnt out my team, because I remember one December, a couple of my team members putting their hand up going, we're really tired. Can we just slow down a bit? And I was like, had no idea, and realized, I should know this before someone's putting up their hand.
Well, and I think that's the important piece, because the entrepreneur always has a different energy for the business than anyone else that's working with them. Whether they're an employee, whether they're a contractor, it doesn't matter, because it's your energy, it's your excitement,
Yes.
for all of the pieces, right? And you may feel like you're just kind of, cruising along, but everyone else is like, doing their very best to keep up. And every time you look at them, they're trying to make it like it's all okay. Right. So for someone who was where you were a few years ago, overextended, all, starting to feel burnt out, but not really sure if they're burnt out, because I think, I'm not sure if you would have described yourself as burnt out.
Never.
And you may not even quite have described yourself as overextended even at the time, because entrepreneurs have so much energy for this, right? It's back to, I can get it done. I can get it, I've got time. I can get it done. It's one of my favorite lines out of The Incredibles is where, it's the very beginning. It's like, oh, I've got time. I can still go do this. Oh, I've got time. I can do it. And then of course, walks into his wedding late, right? I think
I'm notorious for that. In our family, I use that line a lot, and it's a big inner joke because they can't believe how much I can get done. But to your point, there was a time where I knew it was almost too much. And for me, like, that's saying something, because I can do a lot. And so going back to your question of what would I say to someone who's where I was at a few years ago, is I'll go back to that juggling all the balls analogy, is think about the balls that you have in the air, which ones can bounce, which ones you can put down for a minute or two, and which ones are the ones that cannot be dropped. And can you pass them to someone else who you trust, transferring trust, or are there other ones you can transfer and you're keeping those important ones, but really knowing what you've got. And if because sometimes you're doing stuff that you really don't need to do. They're urgent, but it's not important. And you could put those down for a minute and really look after the important, and have a couple people working with you, whether it's fractional or full-time, that you can pass balls to, and that whole transferring the trust. I think that's the key. But writing it all down, I still remember, and it's something that again, because I don't like all the details, and you tell us every quarter to do it, and others, like, write down everything you do and then think about, should I be doing it? Should I just not do it? Or should I delegate it? I love that chart. Even though I'm not the best at writing it, it's such an important exercise to do for someone when they're doing a lot and trying to grow, is to really figure out what's all going on and what can we not miss and what maybe we should be giving away.
When you said that, it reminded me of something. It's not part of what we prepped you for, but I know you're fine with it. You and I've gone back long enough now. We can go wherever we need to go. Early on, I said something about quarterly planning. And you said, yeah, I do quarterly planning with my clients, but I never take time to do it for myself. And you were actually one of the people that inspired me, one of my clients that inspired me to start doing quarterly planning with my clients. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was probably several years ago now, but you said, once I realized how important it was and I dedicated the time to it, it made all the difference. Right? Because the first few times you were sort of in, sort of out, still having meetings, exactly. there was, talk a little bit about that and how, because I think that probably has also been a really critical element for you in your success in being able to grow and do the sustainability. And talk about it, and I'll probably ask you some other questions, but just for sure. Share a little bit about that.
And I want to there's strategic planning, and then there's operational planning. So you can have your big annual plan. A lot of companies will build a big annual plan, and then you look at it a year later and go, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to do all that. I got a couple things done. What I love about the quarterly planning is, and you have to put the time in. And when we do it with you, it's 2 afternoons in a month, which is hard for a busy scaling company CEO to put in. And at the beginning, you're right. I was like, yeah, I can do part of it. I can do an hour here. I can do half of this and half of that. What I learned is I wasn't all in, and I wouldn't get it all done. And when you put the time in, you get the time to reflect on what you did in the last quarter, what went well, what might have not have gone well, but you can learn on. And then you start planning the next quarter of, what are the things I need to get done? What are the things I'd like to get done? And then you really make the plan. And you added in something, and I think we should talk about this with goals, is good, better, best, and making them real. And I remember one time I'd have like a sales goal, and I'd be like, yeah, week 4, I'm there. And you'd be like, okay, you need a bigger goal. That can't be your best goal. If it shouldn't be that easy, because then you won't stretch yourself, and two, you won't know the full potential of it. And sometimes it might not be a sales goal. It might be a different operational goal, or building the process you've really been avoiding, putting that as part of the stability quarter. Stability quarter means I shouldn't be having some rock star sales goals. I should be focusing on the structure and process or staff of my business, the stuff I need to build so I can have the next rock star quarter. And then the other part about is working the plan. And what I love about your process is we do the quarter, but then we have a plan that's weekly. And every week you write in where you're at, what you're doing next week, what went well, what do you need help with. And that really keeps you aligned and remembering to the quarterly goals that you keep. And what I say that made a huge impact in how my company grows, how I manage myself, and also hold my team accountable because I have this quarterly plan that I work.
It's interesting because I was talking to one of my other clients yesterday specifically about this, and we were talking about what we call the weekly course of action, which is the weekly aspect of this. And she was like, it's made such a huge impact for me. And so I was asking her why. She's one of my newer clients. And so, has kind of what I'll say a fresher perspective, on the whole thing. And when we first started, we weren't doing weekly course of action, right? I mean, that came in probably a year or so later. But the thing that she said, and I'm curious about you kind of alluded to it, is it's about providing focus, right, for what this week is about. Have you found that to be a similar, what part of what the value is of it?
And it definitely reminds me as I go through it. It also shows me what I plan to do this quarter so it can keep me on track to that. But then I can be very focused on this week and then the next week. And then, and you can change it a little bit. But it also is, oh yes, I committed to this by this date. So how far I'm along, it really keeps you on track to your plan.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And this, of course, is just, I'm really a curiosity question. Part of what we do is we do the quarterly plan with all of the clients at the same time. So it's in a group environment. And I know that you've experienced this in a variety of situations. Many of my clients are in much smaller businesses than what your business is and your industry. They're in completely different industries than where
yes.
where you are. Do you still find the input from the other people valuable, even though they're in these completely different industries, different spaces, different, I'll say, ages in their business? Some of them are more early stage, some may be later stage.
I find great value in it because when it's a community, too, no matter how big or small your business is, we're all entrepreneurs, we're all business owners. We've all had different experiences, and someone might have a totally different type of business, but when you share a challenge or what you're thinking, they might have something really unique that you take from their side of the business over, or they may talk about something they're doing. And I get this quite often. They're talking about a promotion, like some of them are retail stores and that they'll talk about a promotion or a thing they're doing with their clients. And I'll be like, well, I couldn't do it that way, but that's really interesting. How could I apply it to my business or current business problem? And vice versa. They may have an issue with staff or something like that. And I can give insight, even though we don't have the same type of businesses. We might have had similar staff issues or successes or ways of doing things. Yeah, I love it because it gives me a community. It also gives you accountability because when you've been in it a while, like you almost, even though most of them you've never met in person, you see them every quarter. So you have that accountability. You're looking forward to showing up with them. You want to hear about their other businesses, and you have the time. It carves out the time. I do strategic coach as well. And whenever I go to those workshops, you've carved out the time to do work on your business, not in your business. And it's so easy to keep working in your business and never time to work really focused on your business and the success of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a huge piece. And like you said, it's really easy to lose that time if you don't have something, set aside. And of course, having it as a preset aside that you're, like you said, accountable to other people to show up because they miss you. I mean, like you've seen it when someone's like, yeah, I had to be out because I got sick, or whatever's like, oh, we missed you last time. Like it really is a community, even though, as you said, most of the people have never met one another in person. Mm-hmm. But even so, for instance, one of our members was traveling to Germany and met up with one of our German members. And this last week, I saw a picture of the two of them together. They'd never met each other, but because of this relationship, they were, they made a point to connect while they were there together. So the relationships there are really strong. And I know we've all found in different times where people have really been supportive outside of that time. Definitely. As well.
Yes.
So I think that's the power of not doing it by yourself.
Definitely.
Because, of course, everything we do, you could do by yourself.
You can. And I remember once doing it by myself because I was going to miss it. I couldn't do it, but I said, I have to do it. And it was so much harder, and it seemed to take so much longer, though I'm sure it was the same time. I probably did it faster, but it felt longer doing it by myself than doing it in a community. And in the community, there's energy, there's humor. Sometimes there's hard things people share, but with the community, we see people get out of things, or people who've had a really hard quarter. Having that community actually gives them energy to be excited about the next quarter, no matter how your business is running.
Yeah, no, I love that. So last question. If someone is, listening is saying, I want to grow up to be Nicole Serena. I want to take my individual consulting business and I want to scale it and grow it. And of course, my first thing is you can't be Nicole. We already have a Nicole. Context matters. You may not be able to do it exactly like Nicole has, but what would be a first step that you would recommend that they take in building their business to their own version of, sustainable success, not just growing and scaling as fast as you can, but being able to do it in a way that will be able to be sustained over time? Because I really think that is the key to figure it out.
I think my first advice would be don't do it all yourself. So whether you have an accountability partner, an advisor like I have, Gwen, there's your plug. She's awesome. Or coach or a mentor. Like I get it. Some people who are just starting business, individual consultant, you have tight budgets. You can do it in many different ways. You can even just get a mentor or an accountability partner, someone else who works to work with. Don't do it by yourself because you get into your own silo and sometimes you can't see out of your own silo what's going on. That would be the one is find a community or find someone to help you with it to grow because we're not the expert. We may be the expert. I'm the expert at the consulting I do. I wasn't an expert at building my business. I needed someone to help me do that. And then the other thing is really when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, think of how you can throw the balls to someone else, transfer trust by writing down everything you do and really thinking of who else can do this with you rather than how can I keep doing it myself? Because it's really hard to grow a business. If you stay one, it's really that multiplier factor, right? One person can only do so much. 2 people can do more. 3 people can do even more. And that's how you scale. And then there's also tools. And we didn't even talk about AI or anything like that, but there's many ways that we can do more and yet do it in a way for our budget as we grow.
So yeah, I love that. I think one of the themes that we're hearing through this whole conversation really is who, not how.
Yes.
Right. And I agree with you. That was such a great book by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. And I refer to it a lot often as well, because as entrepreneurs, our natural tendency is to figure out how, because as you said early on, most of the time we actually are capable of doing most of it. 95% of it we're actually capable of doing.
Definitely.
It's not the can we, but back to should we? Are we the best ones to be doing it? Is there someone who could be doing it at least as well, if not possibly better? Finding that who and being okay of transferring that trust to the other people, but do it with caution. right? So, trust but verify.
Yes, exactly.
As things are going. I mean, that's a key piece for delegation is the trust but verify as we're going forward, because it's a huge element when we're trying to do these kinds of things. I'll also remind folks that don't wait until the last minute to fill in the gaps, right? And the stabilization is an important piece. Good scaling is not just about growth. There's a point every once in a while that it needs to stabilize so that next level of foundation has been created in a way that can sustain that next level of growth. Nicole, thank you so much for taking time. I know you're actually getting ready to go do big travel, and so I appreciate you squeezing this in before you had to cross at least one or two, or I don't know, half a dozen oceans to your next big trip. I want to invite anyone who is watching today, or even if you're watching the replay of it. We will be doing this again next week on August 27th. We will be talking with someone completely different than Nicole. We're going to be talking with Abigail McMurray. She is a paper artist, and so she is an individual entrepreneur, solopreneur, with pretty much no desire or hope of scaling her business. That's not what she's looking for, but she still has created a sustainable business as a maker. That'll be starting at 10:15 a.m. Pacific, so that'll be 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on LinkedIn. I hope to see you there. Thanks again, Nicole.
Thanks very much, and Abigail's awesome. Thanks, Gwen.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business You Really Want with Gwen Bortner. I'm Tanya Kubo, reminding you that sustainable success is within reach. Make sure to subscribe to the show and visit thebusinessyoureallyWant.com for more resources. Until next time, keep dreaming big and acting with intention.